Now, as promised, the news in detail. Our top story. In a telephone call, U.S. President Donald Trump has briefed Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan about his conversation with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the situation in occupied Kashmir. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Prime Minister Imran Khan reiterated Pakistan's viewpoint on recent Indian actions in the occupied valley. He said a humanitarian crisis is in the making in occupied Kashmir. The foreign minister said Pakistan wants to de-escalate tensions and expects the U.S. to play its role to resolve the Kashmir dispute. Meanwhile, the U.S. has warned Greece and all Mediterranean ports against helping the Iranian tanker Grace 1 after its release by Gibraltar. In a rebuke to Britain, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called the vessel's release unfortunate. The tanker was detained in Gibraltar last month for carrying Iranian oil to Syria in violation of European Union sanctions. The U.S. wanted the Iranian tanker to be seized, but Gibraltar's government said EU law does now allow it to do so. Pompeo claimed Iran could use profits from the sale of the tanker's oil cargo to fund terrorist activities.
They're elite forces that have sown terror and destruction and killed Americans all around the world. And now they'll have, if they're successful, and we hope that they're ultimately not, but if they're successful, they'll have more money, more wealth, more resources to continue their terror campaign, to continue their assassination campaign in Europe. This is what we're trying to stop. So it's
Well, earlier, President Donald Trump had claimed that Iran wanted to talk to Washington after the vessel's release, but Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Tehran is not interested in talking to the U.S. about a new nuclear deal. Let's move on to Syria now, where rebel forces have withdrawn from Khan Sheikhoun and parts of northern Hama province after heavy fighting with Syrian troops. Earlier, the War Monitor said government forces seized the northern and eastern parts of Khan Sheikhoun. This comes after a Russian airstrike hit a Turkish military convoy traveling towards the front lines in embattled Idlib province. Turkey said 3 civilians were killed and 12 others were wounded in the attack. The Turkish Defense Ministry said the attack violated Ankara's agreements with Moscow. Remaining on topic, Kurdish authorities in northeast Syria have handed over 4 orphaned children linked with ISIS to Germany. They include a boy, 2 sisters, and an infant girl. All of them are under the age of 10. Syrian Kurds have led the U.S.-backed fight against ISIS and have expelled extremists from their last patch of territory in the country's far east. Even as they fight remaining sleeper cells, thousands of alleged ISIS fighters and family members are being held in their custody. Foreign affairs officials with the Kurdistan authorities, Fanar Qaid, said they facilitated the transfer of the children who were in Al-Hol camp. A spokeswoman for the German Foreign Ministry, meanwhile, confirmed the handover to staff from its consulate in neighboring Iraqi Kurdistan. Well, the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen has launched 6 airstrikes on rebel targets in the capital, Sana'a. Saudi state media said coalition raids are ongoing, advising civilians to steer clear of targeted Houthi-held areas. The air campaign follows Houthi drone attacks on the southern Saudi city of Abha over the weekend. Meanwhile, the UN says 40 people have been killed and over 200 have been wounded in fighting since August 8th. Germany and Jordan have agreed on the need for a 2-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This comes after the German Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer and Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi met in Amman. Safadi has welcomed Germany's support for the solution. He also thanked Germany for supporting Palestinian refugees through the United Nations Relief and Works Agency.
In our discussions today, we addressed the Palestinian issue, and I briefed Her Excellency on the challenges we're facing in relation to Jerusalem, and we do value the German firm position in the support of the two-state solution as the only viable way going forward. We're grateful for the commitment that Germany continues to show towards UNRWA and supporting 5 million Palestinian refugees.
Well, the German defense minister is also expected to meet with Jordan's King Abdullah during her visit. She will also visit Bundeswehr soldiers deployed in northern Jordan as part of a U.S.-led campaign against ISIS. Sticking with the U.S. now, that country has conducted its first ground-launched cruise missile test after pulling out of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. The test had been prohibited under the INF Treaty. The Pentagon said the missile hit its target after more than 500 kilometers of flight. The United States withdrew from the landmark 1987 pact with Russia on August 2nd, accusing Moscow of violating the accord. Russia has denied that accusation, but has also suspended the treaty. The treaty covered deployed and non-deployed ground-based short and intermediate-range missiles. Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has said there is no alternative to talks on the Ukraine crisis. In a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, Putin said any meeting aimed at resolving the Ukraine crisis should yield tangible results. Macron said there is a real opportunity for peace in Ukraine following the election of President Volodymyr Zelensky. On the Syrian crisis, meanwhile, Macron expressed concern on bombings by regime forces in northwestern Idlib province. Yet Putin put his weight behind the Syrian government and said Moscow supports those attacks in Idlib. In news coming out of Africa now, Sudan's military has said the unveiling of a sovereign council has been postponed. A power-sharing agreement was signed between the opposition and military last week, paving the way for a transitional government and elections. The military said the council's announcement was delayed at the request of the opposition after it wanted to review some of the names proposed earlier. The ruling Sovereign Council will have 11 members, including 6 civilians and 5 from the military. The opposition coalition has to choose 5 civilian members. The agreement designates the Sovereign Council as the highest authority in the country. Now, at the start of the corruption trial of the former Sudanese ruler Omar al-Bashir in Khartoum, an investigator has told the court that the deposed president admitted to receiving $90 million from Saudi Arabia. But Bashir's lawyer has dismissed those accusations. The former president is charged with illicit possession of foreign currency and accepting gifts in an unofficial manner. However, his lawyer said it was usual for leaders to hold amounts of foreign currency. His next hearing is scheduled for August 24th. The former strongman was ousted in April after months of protests, bringing an end to his nearly 30 years in power. A transitional constitution to guide Sudan towards civilian rule was signed on Saturday. Further monsoon storms have pummeled parts of northern India, killing 58 people. The National Disaster Management Authority said 22 others are missing in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Punjab states. Authorities have issued flood alerts in Punjab and Uttar Pradesh after water levels in the Yamuna and other rivers reached dangerous levels. The Punjab government has declared a national calamity in response to the heavy flooding. Meanwhile, the death toll from rain-related incidents in the southern states of Kerala and Karnataka has climbed to nearly 200. Bangladesh, meanwhile, is set to repatriate 3,500 Rohingya refugees to Myanmar from Thursday. The announcement comes after Myanmar government officials visited refugee camps at Cox's Bazar last month. Bangladesh's refugee commissioner says a land transit point has been prepared. The commissioner says the Rohingya refugees will not be forced to return unless they volunteer. As part of the repatriation deal, Bangladesh and Myanmar officials plan to send home 300 Rohingyas each day. Over 700,000 Rohingyas fled a crackdown by Myanmar's military in 2017. And coming up next in this bulletin, detained immigrants have filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government. And in sports, Manchester United has drawn a match against Wolves 1-1. Let's begin this segment with news coming out of the UK. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has asked the European Union to scrap the Irish border backstop provision of the Brexit agreement. In a letter to European Council President Donald Tusk, Johnson called the plan undemocratic. He claimed Britain's Parliament would approve the Brexit deal if the backstop plan is removed. PM Johnson proposed using the post-Brexit transition period to find alternative ways of keeping the border open. Earlier, Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar said the backstop provision cannot be changed. Well, Boris Johnson has also asked Germany and France to compromise on Britain's exit from the European Union. He says the United Kingdom would be ready to leave the EU without a deal on October 31st. Prime Minister Johnson says he hopes that France and Germany will compromise on their stance of holding no further negotiations for a withdrawal agreement.
Now, of course, our friends and partners on the other side of the channel are showing a little bit of reluctance at the moment to change their position. That's fine. I'm confident that they will. But in the meantime, we have to get ready for a no-deal outcome.
Well, the UK opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn has said his party will do everything possible to stop the country from leaving the EU without a deal. He urged lawmakers to get on board in a no-confidence vote against the government to stop a no-deal Brexit. Let's move on now to Spain, where over 9,000 people have been evacuated as wildfires have ripped through the island of Gran Canaria. The fire has entered the northwestern Tamadaba Natural Park, home to the island's oldest pine forests. Officials said the fires are advancing on two fronts in a mountainous area of the island. 16 helicopters and more than 1,000 firefighters are battling the 50-meter-high flames. Authorities said the efforts to tackle the fires were hampered by high temperatures and strong winds. Around 6,000 hectares have been burned till now, while several roads have been closed. Remaining in Europe, a rescue ship with 107 migrants aboard has declined to leave Italian waters. The commander of the Open Arms says refugees stranded off Italy should be flown to Spain by the Coast Guard. The charity ship dismissed Spanish offer to disembark at a port 1,000 kilometers away. Open Arms said the migrants on board were in too dire a condition to make another journey. The rescue group's decision pushed the standoff with Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini further. Salvini has barred the migrants from disembarking, relenting only for 27 minors to be brought ashore. Earlier, several migrants jumped into the sea in a thwarted bid to reach the shores of Italy. Elsewhere, immigrants held in U.S. detention facilities have filed a lawsuit decrying shoddy conditions and medical care. The suit, filed on behalf of 15 migrants and nonprofits, seeks to represent detainees across the country. Immigrants said they're placed in isolation as punishment and denied recommended treatment and surgery. Some 55,000 immigrants are in the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Department's custody. ICE, which largely contracts with private companies and law enforcement agencies for detention space, has declined to comment. The suit cites problems at 8 facilities, including a privately run center in Adelanto, California, and Teller County Jail in Colorado. 13 Chinese tourists have been killed in Laos after their bus plunged 30 meters deep into a ravine. Police said the bus was taking 45 Chinese nationals to the tourist center of Luang Prabang when it skidded off the road. They said 13 bodies have been recovered, while 2 others are missing. In the mountainous northern region of Tokyo, farmers are reviving the traditional practice of ice farming. They create ice slabs and open-air pools while avoiding the ease of refrigeration. More on that now in this report.
In Tokyo's hilly area, a priest blows a conch shell to show gratitude to nature for this year's extensive output of natural ice. Farmers create a luxury dessert called kakigori, made with natural ice and high-grade fruit puree rather than artificially flavored syrup. Farmers say this year's production surprisingly increased due to extreme weather conditions.
The 160 tons made this year already have a buyer. I even have people who make orders which I can't fulfill. You have to wait for your turn to be able to get it.
The process begins in earnest in the winter when water is poured in to freeze solid. The months-long natural ice farming can be halted by rain, which creates difficulties for farmers.
It rains in the winter, which damages the ice, so you have to break it and restart from zero. And if the ice has some thickness at that time, you're forced to carry out 30 tons of ice by hand.
Farmers sell kakigori to local markets and high-end brands which serve it with an additional touch of flavored syrups. Fruit purees transform natural ice into a luxurious and popular product.
Well, on a star-studded night, both literally and metaphorically, Sarajevo launched its 25th annual film festival. The event honored Mexican and Polish directors Alejandro Inarritu and Paweł Pawlikowski for their exceptional contribution to the art form. The Sarajevo Film Festival, a film festival born from war, is now celebrating its 25th anniversary with a slew of international film stars. It's a red carpet with a difference. The event is a bid to revive arts and culture in Sarajevo in an effort to move on from Bosnia's wartime legacy.
I think it's a little bit more than a festival. It's also the celebration of the vitality and the creativity of a town of Sarajevo. And Sarajevo, it's also the center of Europe, and you have to take good care of Europe at this moment.
Paweł Pawlikowski, whose Ida won an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film in 2015, received the Honorary Heart of Sarajevo Award. His co-recipient, Inarritu, famed for his back-to-back Oscars for The Revenant and Birdman, thanked organizers for the honor. French actress Isabelle Huppert was also honored with a special prize at the Bosnian capital's film festival.
Sarajevo Film Festival is graced with the presence of one of the most distinguished actors in cinema today. It gives us great pleasure to pay tribute to this truly legendary star for her honest and intense performances and for her committed search to truth in acting.
The festival was launched in 1995 as an act of defiance towards the 43-month siege of Sarajevo by Bosnian Serb forces. The event has featured big names over the years, such as Robert De Niro, Angelina Jolie, and Jeremy Irons. The Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei has called the U.S. move to blacklist 46 more of its overseas affiliates unjust and politically motivated. It said attempts to suppress Huawei's business will not help the U.S. achieve technological leadership. Huawei called on the U.S. government to end its unjust treatment and remove the Chinese firm from its economic blacklist. It dismissed Washington's decisions to delay a ban on U.S. firms selling to Huawei by 3 months. Huawei said the U.S. decisions would not have a substantial impact on its business. Well, Asian stocks have nudged higher on optimism that governments and central banks of the world will unveil economic stimulus measures. Investors were encouraged by signs of de-escalating trade tensions between the U.S. and China. The People's Bank of China has unveiled a slightly lower key lending rate, boosting hopes of a guided reduction. The Shanghai Composite and Hong Kong's Hang Seng are trading flat after recovering from earlier losses. The Chinese rate cut was well received by investors in Japan, boosting the Nikkei 225 index by 0.5%. The Kospi index in Seoul has gained nearly 1%. Australia's ASX 200 index is also up about 1% after the central bank there said it would consider lowering interest rates to support growth. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And with that, you're all caught up. Thank you for watching this bulletin here at Indus.